Do you think Drake marks the end of mainstream hip-hop as a viable artistic force? Are you annoyed that Green Day ushered in the era of corny, safe, teeny bopper punk and effectively killed punk rock as an anti-establishment statement? Are you a serious music fan who loves the Beastie Boys and their incredible discography, yet are dismayed that their moronic joke of a debut album is the first one casual idiot fans point to? Are you sick of pretentious indie hipster scum who hail Pulp as the best Britpop band, while you know that Jarvis Cocker's shtick was contrived, campy, and as inauthentic as it got? On this episode, the Curmudgeons give you the 10 most definitively overrated albums of all time.
Welcome, everyone, to the 20th edition of the Curmudgeon Rock Report. This is Christopher O'Connor coming to you from Houston, Texas. And with me, as always, is Arturo Andrade coming to you from Gwangju, South Korea. Together, we host the podcast made just for you, the rock geek iconoclastic outsider looking for safe haven in a mainstream world that has turned your once celebrated solace into a niche. Well, here on the Curmudgeon Rock Report, we not only celebrate that niche, we live it in full color and at full force. And then, hey, there's a good chance you'll learn some stuff you never knew before along the way. Join our curmudgeonly community today. Subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, Apple, and all the other places where you find all the podcasts. Drop us a line at curmudgeonrock@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at curmudgeonpod. And coming soon, you'll be able to become part of our own private Facebook group, where you can share thoughts, musings, and random excitement with fellow travelers along the curmudgeonly path to rock and roll righteousness. Now, how about that, Arturo?
That sounds good. We need as many curmudgeonly fans as possible. And we might have some enemies as well, because today's episode, we are giving the 10 most definitively overrated albums of all time. And we didn't just brainstorm and come up with this. We had a process.
Yes.
Which we came through with these 10 definitive overrated albums related to some previous episodes that we did. We have a system. There's a method to our madness.
Yes, and boy, are we mad. In every sense of the word. We are the mad scientists of the Rock Nerd podcast world. And so I guess up front, before Arturo describes this episode a little bit later, we'll ask you, what do you think is the most overrated album of all time? We'd like to take a poll. So head over to your Gmail and hit us up, curmudgeonrock@gmail.com. What is your most overrated record of all time? A bunch of you will probably say something from Bruce Springsteen, or you might say like a prayer, or who knows? Who knows? There's a few, Hotel California. I mean, come on. But yeah, whatever you got, bring it on. And now it's time to enter our parallel universe. Long-time sufferers and or listeners of this podcast will know that every episode we cross over into the great beyond and the second universe over there, in which rock and roll still rules the roost, still fills the stadiums, still is all over the radio. And Ty Segall is as big as Tom Petty. And the war on drugs is as big as U2. It's an interesting world over here, and we belong. You and us, we all belong. And so this week, not only are we in the parallel universe, but Arturo and I are in perfect harmony, because we are vibing on the same record at the same time. And so should you, because welcome to the best young band in the world.
Yes, absolutely. I don't know about the best, but they definitely have an argument to be the best young rock and roll band on the planet right now. We're talking about the Australian band Amyl and the Sniffers, and their brand new album came out a month or 2 months ago, called Comfort to Me. It is the follow up to their amazing self titled debut album from 2 years ago. And this is a rarity in the Curmudgeon Rock Report. Usually, Chris, you have your recommendation for a new album. I have my recommendation for a new album. But in the because this album is so good, we are both going to recommend it at the same time, and we both have our own takes on this wonderful, brilliant record that definitely for sure is, as of now, and I don't see anything else coming up being better, the best rock and roll album of the year so far. Hands down.
Absolutely. This record, it's 35 minutes of pure rock and roll blast away, but it also is very, very smart. Now, Amyl, when they came on, a lot of other rock critics, other rock enthusiasts, podcasters saw them as something of a shtick band. Here you had the obnoxious young female singer who was singing in something of a comical oi 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 kind of voice. Yes, they are Australian, and basically singing about her libido and about how much you can fuck off, and other such topics. Well, it turns out young women and young men do grow up, and this band has grown up significantly. And as it turns out, Amy Taylor has a soul, and is she's more thoughtful and more romantic than you would think. Because here, you've got those fat punk riffs and those really tight, constructed chug-along songs, and just really strong punk pop writing. Again, I would say that this album's more consistent. I would say that this album is more consistent than the debut, the self-titled debut. That one I always said was like, okay, 25% of that record was the first song and the last song. And so clearly they were sandwiching the album with the singles, and here were the songs that were most indicative of what we're capable of, what are at our best. And then they just kind of crammed the middle of it with all these little silly and smart but silly bangers, like a minute and a half, 2 minute bangers here and there. This album, consistently 2.5, 3 minutes, well constructed verse, chorus, verse, and really you've got heady riffs, and you've got surprisingly and sweetly romantic lyrics in some spots, and some genuine feminism. How about that?
Yeah. I mean, basically, what Amyl and the Sniffers, when they came out, I mean, their thing was they were basically dirty, sleazy, scummy barroom rock combined with hardcore punk. Basically, AC/DC meets Black Flag. That was them when they first came out. And this new album still has that. It still has that. But like I said to you, Chris, before, and I'll say it to all the listeners out there for the first time, the specter of Kathleen Hanna hovers a lot over this record. Not just in the lyrics, we hear more of a feminist bent. That they're a little smarter than before. They're more mature, but also in the music. They've kind of gone in some of the riffs and some of the rhythms, and some of the more interesting instrumental passages. You can show hints of them getting away from like barroom, trash punk, and getting more into what, like, I guess you would call alternative rockish.
Yes, I suppose
without losing the heaviness, which is the good thing about it, because this album still fucking rocks.
Yeah, it's still very heavy, but I think they're definitely getting away from the AC/DC oi oi oi
Yeah.
We want to fight all night kind of aesthetic, and I think
Yeah.
it's becoming smarter. I could see parallels. I mean, in some ways, it harkens back to some of the sort of more uh, tuneful or smarter punk bands of the 70s.
Yeah.
It has that kind of just hard driving with a purpose.
Right.
It's not just bashing the fuck out. It's it calling these guys pub rock, I think, is a real insult.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're not a pub. Well, punk rock, yeah, but not pub pub. No way. They're
No.
beyond. They're beyond that.
Yeah, they're beyond that. They're certainly beyond that now. And again, so what I see on this record, there's just some really great pop songs, and the one that really does it the most for me is "Hurts." This is the best song that I've heard all year, and the best song I probably will hear all year. This is "Love in the Backseat of a Rental Car."
But she's talking about how much she loves nature and being outside of the city.
Yeah, in the backseat of a rental car, but at the same time, but it's very sweet, and it's actually it's more about love, and it's hey, we're taking a trip out in the country, I'm seeing mosquitoes, and take me to the beach and take me to the country, get me out there. I want this fresh air. I want all of this stuff. Get me away. But if you show me that you love me, put me in the back seat. And it's a road trip in a rental car. But it's not all the, hey, look, everybody, we're doing it in the back seat of a Hertz.
Yeah.
It's much smarter and much deeper than that.
Yeah, it is. And then that's one of the singles from the album. Absolutely. Another song where like the feminist slant comes in is a song called "Knifey." It's not musically, it's not one of the better songs on the album, but lyrically, it's really kind of it's a really resonant lyric. It's really about her admitting her vulnerability. Yeah, I act like a tough rock and roll girl, and I do all this shit on stage, but in the end, I'm physically a small statured person, and I'm not a muscular person. I'm kind of, I'm a woman in a male dominated world. And yeah, I carry a knife with me because I'm walking down the harbor. I love walking down in the streets late at night, but I'm afraid of being raped. So I got to carry this knife with me. And that says something. And that's kind of a poignant thing to say, in a rock and roll song, particularly in the context of a rock and roll band that's all about bravado. And here she is admitting, her fear, admitting somewhat. I think it takes courage to admit fear, so it's not really weakness, but it's an admission of fear, and it's got a feminist slant as well, which is gives it more of a punch.
Yeah, and I see that same thing on the song "Security" as well. I think that's one of the other singles, but it's got a little bit of a swing to it, and it's got a little bit of that confessional bent to it as well. It's like I said, this is a really great record. And again, to me, the older I get, if your album is longer than 45 minutes, I'm probably inclined to think it's not that great of an album. To me, the shorter and the tighter, the better.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, these days, and I guess that's always been sort of the case. Look, there's not a whole lot of people that have a platform these days that can pull off an epic like we used to get, like the 50 to 70 minute epics that we got in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And so
I think there's a reason for that. It's because back then, in the 90s especially, we had a CD allotted for 78 minutes of music. So a lot of artists and bands felt, well, I got to load up and put as much music as possible to justify the $19.99 list price for the CD. Well, nowadays, that shit's obsolete now. So,
well, yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it. But even back then, I mean, you had Weezer records that never went over like 30 minutes or 35 minutes, and you were still spending $19.99. But and then, like I said, obviously the perfect example is Metallica when they did Load. That a CD could contain 79 minutes and 59 seconds worth of music. Well, guess how long that record was?
79, 80 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah,
And half of it sucked.
yeah, at least half of it sucked. But anyway, we're talking about Amyl and the Sniffers.
Right.
So, as a character, as an iconoclast, as a increasingly feminist icon, I think Amy Taylor is a rock star to watch. In a world where there was any justice, obviously over here in the parallel universe, she is the star.
Yeah, she would be on the cover of Rolling Stone if this were in the parallel universe Rolling Stone.
Yeah, she's the star over on this side of the line. Just really charismatic, really great sort of punk front woman. Like I said, even not a bad voice in terms of if you have a punk, like a tuneful punk scream.
Yeah,
she's got the tuneful punk scream.
Oh, totally.
She's got the attitude, she's got the swagger.
Yeah,
but she's got the lyrics and she's got the sensitivity.
Sure. I mean, a lot of people are going to compare her to other female punk rock singers. You know what I compare her to? She's kind of like the new Joe Strummer in a way.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. Yeah, she's just straightforward, don't give a fuck, just straight ahead and just doing her thing, and has utter confidence in her convictions, but also, like Arturo said, I guess even the self-confidence to be vulnerable and to be open and to be honest in her songs. And, props has to go to the band, too. I think the band has gotten a lot more consistent. They have this, there's a bottom to their stuff now. It's not just chugging, but man, it's just with the bass and the rhythm and all of that. They're just really, really solid. I mean, they've always had smart riffs going on, and they, this sort of, angular. I usually don't use the word angular, but I think it counts here that you can call these angular riffs. And there's, this is not your standard bash out. This is like very smart verse, chorus, verse, but well thought out, well conceived riffs. They obviously work pretty hard on their arrangements, and there's a consistency to the sound here that makes this just great. So, on that note, we will now leave the parallel universe and let us get going with this episode's concept. You heard it at the beginning of the broadcast. We are giving you the 10 most definitively overrated albums of all time. What else do you have to say about that, Arturo?
Yeah, well, let me explain how we came about with this, okay? We didn't just randomly say, oh, I don't like this album, overrated, okay. No, we had a process. On our last episode, we each went through a list of 8 albums that we love that the other doesn't, right? That was our last episode. Now, the genesis of this was a brainstorming session in which we each wrote down albums that we think are perennially overrated, ranging from albums we think flat out suck to albums that we like but don't think are worthy acclaim. So we each circled the albums on each other's list that we disagreed with. Okay. And that was the basis for last episode's I love it, he doesn't premise. The leftover albums that we didn't circle, that we all think are overrated from both lists were the albums that we agreed on. That we agreed on in the curmudgeonly viewpoint, their overrated nature. So we took the leftovers of those lists, put them together, pruned it, edited it, said, oh, okay, well, do you think this one's more overrated than this one? No, I think this one is less overrated, blah, blah, blah. So we went over, pruned it, edited some stuff out, threw a few more out, and organized it into a tidy list of the 10 most definitively overrated albums of all time given to you by the Curmudgeons. And why are they definitively overrated? Because it's our podcast, God damn it. We know more than you. Well, maybe not.
Yeah, no shit. No shit. And so we're going to drop knowledge.
Yeah.
We're going to this is an interesting list. There may be some disagreement, especially among the ladies, when we get to the top or conversely the bottom of this well. But yeah, and again, some of this is sort of like low hanging fruit or fish in a barrel. Some of it is contrarian. If you went to college in the mid 90s, there may be one or two of these that you remember getting wasted to a few times or singing and weeping to at 4 a.m. Well, I'm here to tell you that it wasn't as profound of an experience as you thought it was, dude. So yeah, so
Yeah.
we're here to dispel those myths. And looking at this list, it goes back to 1969.
As far back as it goes. Yeah.
Yes. And the most recent of these is from 2011. And so it's a far ranging list that proves that the overrated, over celebrated, bloated ass pop record that most people revere and guys like us are like, no. That's been a tradition for as long as white boy rock and roll itself.
The 1990s were the fourth golden age of rock. I'm stealing that term from Arturo, because I wholeheartedly agree. It's a perfect way to describe the era. Why do we make that argument? Find out soon. The Curmudgeon Rock Report will be basing an entire series of episodes on the topic. From Lollapalooza, the good kind of shoegazing, and grunge, all the way through to EDM, mook rock, and Napster, we'll cover the spectrum of a beautiful, incredible span of time where everything changed. At first for the better, and ultimately perhaps for the much worse. What defined the 1990s for you? Let us know at curmudgeonrock@gmail.com.
Here we go, folks, whether you like it or not, and whether you disagree or not, and many of you may disagree, but here we go. Chris and Arturo will give you the curmudgeonly list of the 10 most absolute, definitively overrated albums of all time, because and that's the bottom line, because we said so.
Yeah, absolutely. Steve Austin, we tip our cap to you. And coincidentally, again, curmudgeonrock@gmail.com. We want to hear your overrated albums and reaction to these. Especially some of you may disagree with this one or be up in arms. Number 10 on this list is Drake's "Take Care" from 2011. Drake is interesting. So now Rolling Stone, in its most recent release late last year of the 500 greatest albums of all time, listed "Take Care" from Drake at number 95.
Jesus.
Which proves or kind of gives weight to my thought that somebody over at Rolling Stone is smoking tainted crack,
or they have a really good relationship with Drake and their PR agent and his PR agent, so they got to make sure they give him a nice little entry in the list.
Now, true. Now, to be fair, I think that Drake has proven very influential in the sense that here is this, for the two or three of you out there that don't know by now, Drake is one of the biggest pop stars in the world and has sold a gazillion records over the last 13 years. Mr. Aubrey Graham from Toronto, Canada, did not grow up on the streets. He actually grew up in Degrassi Junior High. He was a regular on that show for a little while when he was a teenager, and he took his dramatic arts and his artistic sensibilities into hip-hop. Sort of. Drake's shtick is a stream of consciousness, self-conscious, dialectic with himself, where he is the champagne poppy on the one end, and he's an absolute mess who drunk dials ex-girlfriends with overwrought confessionals about all the stuff that he did wrong. And he does it in this sort of in and out of singing and rapping and sort of rapid fire, all over the place. It's got a rhyme scheme. I mean, he's not a bad rapper. I'll give him that. He's got some talent, but it's the in and out of auto-tune and
auto-tune. Ugh.
Yeah. Rapping, then singing, rapping, then singing, singing, or that sort of, I think it was Kanye first with 808s and Heartbreak, and then Drake and a couple others around there that decided that even if you couldn't really sing, and even if you couldn't have a sense of melody, you could give it a shot. And so it was almost like it was almost akin to like a blues singing without like rhythm or real
Soul
melody or
or
soul.
soul.
Yeah, and so it was just kind of this scattering, like you know, I loved her, then I didn't, all the way up here, then down here, you know. So it's
Yeah, no. Basically, Drake marks, like I said in my teaser at the beginning of this episode, I think maybe some of you curmudgeon fans out there don't, but I think he does mark the end of mainstream hip hop as a viable artistic force. It's mainstream, it's popular, it sells a lot of records, but God, is it fucking shit. I mean, seriously, yeah, Kanye may have started with 808 Heartbreak, but Drake took that ball and ran with it for the next decade.
oh
And
yeah, he ran with it, and I'll give him this. He got a couple of decent pop hits out of it with Rihanna. He did start it from the bottom, which is actually a very good song. And Marvin's Room, which is the most famous song from this record, that's the drunk dialing his girlfriend song, is actually okay. Lyrically, it's kind of a fascinating concept, but it's painful, man. It's the same thing in various forms over and over and over again.
Yeah, and on top of that, it's the music. It's the beginning, and Drake even more than Kanye, because Kanye would started that, but he would go back to real hip hop later on. It was Drake who kind of instigated and paved the way for many other hip hop artists to go in the MME direction, as I call it. Moody, mellow, ethereal, all the time.
Yes.
Moody, mellow, ethereal. Like
moody. Yep.
Yeah, hip hop's supposed to have funk and soul. This has fake soul. He's trying to go for soulful, and he always sounds like shit. He always sounds fake, contrived, like the fucking preppy that he really is. And there's no fucking funk. If there's no funk to your hip hop, you can't really move to it. What the hell is the point?
Yeah, I mean, look, in a way, is some of it engaging? Yes, but it gets tiresome. Okay, 3 or 4 songs where he's doing that shtick and embodying that persona. Okay, great. Rihanna hook once in a while, yes. A Kendrick Lamar guest spot, okay. But on and on and on and on, and it becomes it's basically like the world's wussiest onslaught. If you think about it, it's just Drake. It's like, dude, either get some therapy or get some hooks. Yeah. And on that note, we do a complete 180. We go from the Champagne Poppy from Toronto to a bunch of smoked out hippies that wanted to ride their wooden ships back in the late 60s.
Yes, they did.
Probably off a waterfall with the way that they were all living at the time. So who are we talking about, Arturo?
We're talking about Crosby, Stills, and Nash and their debut album from 1969, Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Now, here's the thing. How do I start with these guys? Like when I was a teenager and like really getting into classic rock and all that stuff, and I would really listen to all the old stuff because, a lot of the new stuff sucked at the time. This is before the alt rock era kicked in. I would listen to like rock radio and they would play, this is Crosby, Stills, and Nash. And you'd hear Sweet Judy Blue Eyes. You'd hear Long Time Gone. And those are nice songs, but, I like Robert Christgau always called Crosby, Stills, and Nash, their choir boy shtick, which he never really was a fan of. So I would hear Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and I would hear, okay, it's nice, but it's like kind of hippie dippy shit. It's okay. I mean, the Byrds did way better hippie folk than these guys did, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely. By a mile.
And then I would still listen to the radio, and then you would hear, here's a song by Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. And then, wow, this is way better than Crosby, Stills, and Nash without Young.
Yeah.
It comes to show that Neil Young gave this band their balls. And while Stills was an amazing acoustic guitar player, Young was rocked way harder, way better, was a more original guitar player, a more original voice, and hey, lo and behold, a way better songwriter than any of those three put together.
Yeah,
And
pretty much. Although, well, Steve Stills was good. Steve Stills was a very good songwriter, and technically was a better guitar player than Young. Although I would listen to Young 99 times out of 100 over Stills.
Yeah, Neil's way more inventive, had a way more original and influential guitar sound. So yeah, it's a long way of saying Crosby, Stills, and Nash. This album, their debut before Neil joined them, is heralded as a classic rock classic of all time. Deja Vu is much better, and mainly for the reason that Neil Young is there. But this album in itself, as a whole, I don't think really holds up very well. I mean, the radio hits from this song are the radio hits, and they're okay. But in general, it's kind of lightweight, hippy dippy Laurel Canyon folk that I think other artists like Neil Young,
Joni Mitchell,
did way better. So
yeah. No, absolutely. Look, I mean, there's some individually pretty good songs. I mean, my favorite song off this has always been Marrakesh Express.
That's my least favorite. It's just a cheesy, corny cartoon song.
Well, but that's why I like it. Well, that's kind of why I like it. And Wooden Ships is pretty good too. I mean, that's Steve Stills at his best.
A little raw trivia. That's one of Trent Reznor's favorite songs. He loves this album.
Oh, I know. And then, but let's just put it this way: any album that has "Helplessly Hoping" on it that still makes a best of album, no. Yeah. And here's the funny part about Deja Vu. I believe Neil only played on 4 songs on that record. So he didn't play on Carry On.
Wow.
So I think even just by Young, his association and having his name on the group and his association with those recording sessions, all of a sudden just lifted Steve Stills into his best. Well, and Crosby for that matter. Now we're moving down the ladder.
Speaking of which, number 8. More hip hop, more shitty hip hop.
Exactly. I don't even know if you should call this hip hop. We're talking about The Streets original pirate material, which for about 8 months, 9 months back in 2002, 2003, had a whole bunch of white boy critics on both sides of the ocean, really excited. I never understood why. Was it EDM? Was it hip hop?
It's a fusion, man. It's a fusion.
Yeah. Is it spoken word? Maybe, but it's really badly spoken words. The Streets. This was a dude from England, and this was at the beginning of the grime scene, which I guess this guy was indicative of. And a lot of it is just sounds like a guy just drinking and being bored and doing these little rants that sound like this, and then sound like this, and then here's another rhyme and another rhyme. I mean, it's not really a cadence. It's just sort of like it's a ramble. And it goes through and it keeps on rambling. I guess I get the appeal that it was talking about the sort of the income inequality of Britain at the time, and it was talking about the struggle for reptilians or rapskillions, or reptilians like this guy. And I don't know. I just never heard it. It's skittery. It's basically unlistenable. I don't know if you'd agree with that.
I agree. Yeah, no, I hate this record.
I mean, look, at least Drake had some sort of sense of tunefulness. This guy is just like, it's almost like he was just doing his ranting and skittering sort of musings in the studio unaccompanied while he was high or in the middle of a psychotic break, and then somebody set music to it later.
Yeah. I mean, this album, by the way, the name of the album is Original Pirate Material.
Yes, original pirate material.
It
Yes.
came out in 2002.
Yes.
Needless to say, a year later, Dizzy Rascal, another British rapper, came out with Boy in That Corner, his debut, and did this shtick way better, with much better rapping skills, much more interesting lyrics, and way better and funkier electronic beats. And if you want to take it further, 11 years after this album came out, if you're doing the whole, drunken white Cockney British guy ranting and raving in rhyme about socioeconomic disparity and political strife with like a funky beat behind him, look no further than Slayford Mods, who took this shit way better, way more coherent, way smarter, and just better lyrics in general and better music in general too. And it's just a guy with a laptop who's doing it,
Yeah, I was gonna say, and the Streets, for what it's worth, the guy's name is Mike Skinner. I've been saying the guy, but Mike Skinner, for a while, for about a year there, he was like a hero to the NME set. He did not win the Mercury Prize, and so there's this history of the Mercury Prize of the more lauded records not winning, not winning the prize. But like you said, Dizzy Rascal came out the next year and was an actual rapper that had a really original shtick where he was basically like a dance hall toaster with a lisp, but with a very Cockney accent, but who could just ride a beat like a motherfucker.
Right.
That guy was good. Whereas where Skinner, look, I get it. He was kind of like, it was monologia from British working class life.
It's been done better before him and was done better after him.
Yes, I mean, I guess it fits into a tradition, but like Arturo said, and I guess this is our way and our opportunity to plug Slayford Mods. Go check them out. But Original Pirate Material, could not avoid it in our late 20s for as much as we wanted to.
Yeah,
it wouldn't go away.
Let's move on to number 7, the most definitively overrated albums of all time. And this is going to piss off a lot of people because this is one of the most popular records of the 90s and possibly of all time.
Yes.
And that is the Canadian songstress Alanis Morissette and her 1995 pseudo-classic Jagged Little Pill.
It's like rain.
Yeah, I know.
On my ass.
Yeah, ironic, even though none of the lyrics are ironic at all. But anyway, this album, when it came out, we all know, anyone growing up in that era and, probably knows how big of a hit this was. She was everywhere on MTV, on the radio. She had a bunch of hits off this album. Even at the time, 20 to 21-year-old me, even then, I thought this is really like, kind of like fake wannabe pop grunge, which is not what you want to be at all. Like really polished pop, fake wannabe pop grunge. And then I learned, man, if I thought this was really pop, check out Alanis Morissette's earlier stuff from the late 80s and early 90s. That was straight up New Kids on the Block type of shit.
Oh yeah.
So take that and give it like a slightly grunge feel and then polish it up for radio. And you have a bunch of songs about her breaking up with that guy from Full House.
Full House, yeah.
Now, what's his name again? The comedian?
Dave
Coulier, right? Coulier, and they were both So it was her breakup from that. The first song, You Ought to Know, is about that. I'm sure several other songs were about him as well. But anyway, my reason for calling this album overrated is A, the production, B, the songwriting. I really don't think is that good. I think it's really corny. I mean, I don't believe in albums being dated, but if anything is dated in the 90s, it's this record right here.
Yeah, pretty much. This record is definitely a moment in time. Like you said, sophomore and junior, basically junior year of college, when I was in my frat boy phase back then. I could not avoid this album. I could not avoid Hootie and the Blowfish.
Oh God,
Correct Review, and I could not avoid Tragic Kingdom by No Doubt. That was the triad of unbearable records at the time.
yeah.
I'll give it up for Alanis. There were a couple of decent songs on that record. She was working with Glenn Ballard, who had struck a hit by co-writing "Man in the Mirror" for Michael Jackson in 1988. He's a studio pro. He's one of these guys who can write a pop song in 20 minutes. So, yeah, I mean, more power to her. She sold a gazillion records. She got a Broadway show out of it. Yeah, I mean, you can't argue with the success of it. Yeah, she got Navarro and Flea to play guitar and bass on You Ought to Know, which is why it's the best song on the record, because it's the only song that actually rocks.
Yeah.
The rest of it is sort of cornball confessional pop. From what I've read, a bunch of it is sort of single take, or is just sort of, the organic production of, them collaborating in the studio, coming up with all this crap. So, it just, yeah, I agree. It's overrated. It was a zeitgeist record. She was a kind of a hippie chick from Canada who had a lot to say, and she wrote breakup songs that resonated for chicks her age.
A lot to say with little of substance.
Well, yeah, exactly. A lot to say in the most synthetic way possible. But it resonated with a bunch of superficial 21-year-old girls that we were surrounded with. And it was like all the girls that we thought were hot back in at SU, or you would think were hot initially, like this record, and then they weren't so hot.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I got to a point, like if I was talking to a girl, and we were talking about music, and then she would say how much she likes Alanis Morissette, I just instantly lost attraction to her. Like, okay,
litmus test, baby.
Yeah, I'm done. Yeah, and here's what pisses me off too. Like the 1990s was a decade in which, women in rock became a real thing. You had so many solo female artists came up big and were making important, great records, and yes, such great ones like Liz Phair and PJ Harvey and the Breeders, and yet
Slater Kinney,
and yet, Slater Kinney never aspired to be superstar band.
Well,
but anyway,
yeah, they never, swung for the Alanis fence.
Yeah,
but yeah,
PJ Harvey, another one, and yet Alanis is the one that hit the pinnacle. She's the one that did it.
Yeah.
Really?
The Canadian chick who was on You Can't Do That on Television.
Right. I know.
So when she was 9 years old, she got slimed. I don't know, green slime. And then she grew up to be like the iconic songstress, frazzled, spurned lover bitch from 1995. Yeah, go figure.
We got slimed by her music. All right. And the next one on this list is an artist that we actually like, but it's just this one album that's overrated. Chris, number 6. Number 6.
A lot of people will disagree with us on this one. The Beastie Boys' License to Ill. The thing about License to Ill is it's a good record. And it's in some ways a groundbreaking record, otherwise known as the white boys that took the Rick Rubin hip hop formula to the top of the charts, even higher than Run DMC. But here's the thing: even those guys, by 1988, they were disavowing this record.
Yeah, so, they hated it.
Yeah, I mean, well, they said they hated it, or they were ashamed to have done it. Essentially, it was a shtick. I mean. Look, I mean, the Beastie Boys formed as a I guess you could call them a punk band, or just sort of a
Oh
garage.
no, they were straight up a hardcore punk band when they were teenagers, starting up.
Yeah. And then they discovered hip hop, and remember, this is when they're like 20, 21, 22 years old. They're all, they're doing a lot of drugs, they're partying a lot, and you're talking about these are not guys that like were from the mean streets of anything. You're talking about the son of a very famous Russian American playwright.
Yeah.
And these are three Jews from Brooklyn, I believe. And
they came. All three of them came from upper middle class Jewish families in Brooklyn.
Yes, and good stock. And so at this point, they're wise ass guys just partying and doing this. And hey, it's like, in a way, this thing was a novelty record. It was taking the Rick Rubin Beat Factory and saying, hey, we want to write songs about girls that we like watching doing the dishes. And, we want to drink Brass Monkey and talk about how we like Brass Monkey. And, we want an excuse to sample When the Levee Breaks. And, we want to fight for that right to party. And, we want to do it like this, do it like that. We want to do it with a wiffle ball bat. Oh, and hey, let's put it all to record. This was not this was not a serious effort by some very talented guys. Now, I think they kind of understood that it was the kind of record that it was a novelty record. Let's face it, that could pigeonhole them as the white boys that did the pop rap in 1987. Well, they got more serious. They moved to LA, and of course, a couple of years later, record Paul's Boutique, which is brilliant. When they were working with the Dust Brothers,
one of the best hip hop albums of all time, pioneering record.
Yes, when Adam Yauch in his psychedelic rock and garage rock phase, and finds all of these things, and then they get back to what brung them, and they then proceeded to release a series of adventurous albums that veered
brilliant albums. I mean, Check Your Head from 1992 kind of like foresaw the rap metal that would come on later in the decade.
Absolutely.
It was like one of the most successful fusions of rock and hip hop ever. Ill Communication is a criminally underrated record.
Oh,
has
a lot of great beat
singles.
Work on that.
Great beat work, and Hello Nasty's fantastic. Hello
Nasty is when they started getting more back to sort of the old school vibe. And started doing a lot of turntablism and a lot of the sort of Kraut. They experimented with some Kraut Rock stuff or some vocalized vocals and that. Right. So they got. They proved to be very adventurous and very thoughtful. They, again, by 1998, they were disavowing License to Ill, which ought to tell you everything you need to know.
Yeah.
Is it a funny record? Yeah, it's a funny record. For the sophomoric asshole in all of us, it's a funny record. Are there some great beats on it? Yeah, absolutely. Rhyming and Stealing, great beat. No Sleep Till Brooklyn, great beat. Rick Rubin had a simple formula for beats, which are huge ass drum machine beats and guitars. And so, Rolling Stone had it as the top debut album of all time in their
bullshit.
That's Appetite for Destruction. I don't even think
it's Pearl Jam's 10.
What, debut albums of all time?
Yes.
Bullshit. It's Appetite for Destruction.
Pearl Jam always better than GNR. 10 all the way.
I'll fight you to the death on that one, baby.
No, and you'll lose.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
On this episode, Chris and I counted down the 10 most definitively overrated albums of all time. For the next episode, we'll take a trip down memory lane to our wonder years. September 1985. Oh, what a month. We were 10 years old, starting 5th grade, and the beginning pangs of pubescence weren't far away. But boy, did a lot happen in that month in rock and pop music that kind of shaped the second half of the decade. Tune in as the Curmudgeons talk about Farm Aid, the American government trying to censor the music industry, Michael Jackson pulling a fast one on Paul McCartney, Jefferson Starship destroying our ears with the worst song ever recorded, and much more. Email us at curmudgeonrock@gmail.com or hit us on Twitter at curmudgeonpod.
Now we go to number 5 on our list of the most definitively overrated albums of all time. And this is going to piss off a whole lot of British music fans and indie hipster fans here stateside. Well, not here because I'm in Korea, but anyway, over there stateside where Chris is. And this is the Britpop band Pulp and their supposedly classic 1995 album, Different Class. Now, when you think of 1990s Britpop, the first band that comes to mind is Oasis. Obviously, they were the biggest British band of the 90s. Well, them and Radiohead, right? You think of Oasis, you think of Blur. I tend to think of Elastica because I think they were a fantastic band.
Yeah, one of the great forgotten band of Britpop is Elastica for sure.
And many curmudgeonly episodes ago, we did Elastica in our Vault segment. However, this band, Pulp, is another band that comes up in the great 90s Britpop albums. And I seriously think not only is this album overrated, but this band is sickeningly overrated. And this is coming from a guy who likes the Smiths. And I think and I think Pulp sucks. So that says something right there. You know. I mean, Different Class from 95. This album is praised left and right. NME has it as one of the greatest albums of all time. Rolling Stone, the latest 500, has it really high. I forgot which number. I'm not even going to go into it. Whatever number it has, it doesn't deserve it, even if it's number 500. This is an incredibly overrated album. I will admit it has 2 great singles. Our curmudgeonly friend Chris, you don't like Common People. I think it's a great single. And I think Disco 2000 is a great single. It's a great use of a kind of a rip-off of Laura Branigan's Gloria, especially in the riff. You know, it's actually pretty clever and pretty kitschy. But again, kitsch, that is what, in my opinion, buries Pulp. I said earlier in my teaser that like I said, if you're sick of pretentious indie hipster scum, and there are many of them out there who actually hail Pulp as a great Britpop band. Our buddy Mike in Philly loves Pulp. Another old friend of ours who I haven't spoken to in a long time, but Chris knows him. Another big Pulp fan. We have several friends who are Pulp fans, but my God, is Jarvis Cocker's shtick so fucking annoying. It's contrived. It's campy. It's inauthentic. I don't think his lyrics are as great as his defenders hail it to be. I find, like I said, his shtick is inauthentic and campy. The music is really campy. The music is it's like basically 80s new wave pop overdosed in campy kitsch.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
And half the songs are Cocker being a stalker. I spy you. Ooh, you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, when he's narrowed down to a specific target, like he was in Common People, he's pretty good. And I will go as far as to admitting that I actually like the follow-up, This Is Hardcore from 1998. That's actually a pretty good record because it's Jarvis Cocker at his most human. You know, he sounds natural. He doesn't sound like he's like putting you on with his stupid ironic shtick and his ridiculous campiness.
Yeah, and it's more of a rock record too. So
it's more of a rock record, and lyrically, it actually sounds like he's actually communicating to me. Whereas with everything else Pulp did before This Is Hardcore, it's just style. It's just posturing, campy kitsch posturing. Even the lyrics sound campy, like they're campy kitsch posturing lyrics, which gives it no depth whatsoever. At least, for example, Beck is like the super irony guy of the 1990s. Even with Beck, if you dig through his lyrics, there's some sincerity and there's an authentic soulfulness in there, which Cocker usually does not have. He had it on This Is Hardcore because I think this was him coming down from his drug addiction and like him looking in the mirror and coming to grips with himself as who he is. and he put out and This Is Hardcore is a very unpulp like record. That's why it's their best album.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. I was gonna say, look, Arturo kind of hinted at it. Common People was like basically a hit. It was an MTV staple, and it
it was a
was.
huge in the UK. It's an anthem.
Oh yeah, I know it was huge in the UK, but even here, it was in regular rotation on MTV, regular rotation on the alternative rock stations. I couldn't stand it. I just thought, like you said, it was this campy, pretentious, insufferable, just sort of silly, saccharine kind of almost sing-alongy kind of thing, and it was just, Jarvis Cocker I couldn't take seriously because he obviously was uh, way too impressed with his own shtick. This idea of pretentious and psychotic, and so he's trying to play like he's antisocial, but he's also like the sexiest girl at the bar at the same time.
Yeah,
And you can't do that and not make me roll my eyes. And
yeah,
so the song was like blah. The dude was just what the fuck. And so yeah, I totally had an aversion to him, and so I have avoided deep dives into pulp over the years because of that. It takes a lot for me to have an aversion to that degree, but Jarvis Cocker, that dude had a force field with knives and spikes. Like it was like stalactites.
off
Yeah.
to number 4, a band that really doesn't do irony at all. Chris,
Nope. Green Day. Green Day does not do irony, although it'd be interesting if they did. Hand it to Billy Joe Armstrong. Guys
which
are really
which album? Which album is this, Chris?
Dookie.
From 1994.
Yes. The very intentionally sophomorically titled Dookie, which is the album.
The fourth most definitively overrated album of all time.
Yes, number 4. This is the album that launched a Berkeley East Bay punk band into the stratosphere. Okay, so again, Green Day and Billy Joe Armstrong, good writer of orthodox pop songs of either earnesty or what would you call it? Sort of, well, there's melancholy, there's anger, there's sincerity, there's kind of a boyish hopefulness. Okay, fine. These are all good things, but Dookie, well, one, they ended up doing several records that were much better than that. Nimrod and American Idiot probably being their 2 best records, and so that's one thing. And so this album gets revered. It sold like what, like 10 million, 11 million, 12 million records.
Huge.
Just dominated, had at least 3 or 4 hit singles that are still all over the radio, especially Basket Case. That's the one that's kind of stood the test of time, which is my least favorite song on the entire record. It's overrated because while it might have been indicative of where the culture was going, this was a real punk band that broke just as grunge was starting to fall into the sea. And this was kind of the replacement for grunge, which is really no accident because people were still looking for harder edge sound. And so, remember, them and the Offspring kind of represented a thing in the spring of 1994. Was it a great thing? Nah, not really. But the point being here is it's overrated. Everybody's like, oh, that's one of the great American punk albums of all time. Bullshit. It's a pop record done with fast guitars and a guy who could drum his ass off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, and really, if you think about it, look, Green Day is another one of those bands that found its way to Broadway. Why? Because essentially at his best and at his heart, Billy Joe Armstrong is a writer of show tunes. And so you could make an argument that stuff like Basket Case and When I Come Around, those are show tunes. And so I don't know. It doesn't move me that much. I don't think the album sucks. I don't think it's that great either. Welcome to Paradise is an all-time great single. That's the one standout that I love. The rest of it, hopelessly mediocre, hopelessly does not move me, hopelessly does not want me to listen to this album on repeat. And in a couple of instances, especially Basket Case, is one of the few songs not done by Creed or Linkin Park that makes me change the channel on the radio when I'm driving.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hey, like I said, more power to Billy Joe Armstrong, wonderful writer of show tune type pop.
Yep.
But as a punk, no, I'll take a pass.
Yeah, I mean, interesting you point out the Broadway show tune. I could totally hear Basket Case being done as a Broadway show tune. It has that kind of melody. It has that kind of chord progression. I totally get it. Here's the thing with Green Day. I do not deny them their street cred.
Yeah,
they do have real street cred. They came from that Berkeley. Was it Berkeley? Yeah, they came from Berkeley. They came from that Berkeley straight edge punk rock scene. That was a real scene. There was a real scene. It was a descendant, or you can say an offspring, no pun intended, a descendant of what basically Ian MacKaye started with earlier with Minor Threat and then later with Fugazi. These are all kids who like listen to Minor Threat and Fugazi, say, "Hey, well, let's do our own scene, our own version of this." And all power to them.
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. And don't discount the Dead Kennedys too. I mean,
sure, yeah, because they're from San Francisco, obviously.
Yeah.
So Green Day has street cred as a real punk band. I agree, they are a punk rock band, but they are a very, 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 very poppy, punk rock band. And like you said, I think they're more of a pop band that did punk.
Yeah.
Whereas, let's say Husker Du, later on in their stretch, they were a serious punk band that did pop.
Yeah.
And I don't think a pop band doing punk is a bad thing. I just think Billy Joe Armstrong's an overrated as fuck songwriter. And I think Dookie ushered in the era of just childish kindergarten punk rock, basically. Songs about picking your nose and masturbating. Sorry, man. I was reared on Joe Strummer, The Clash, and and shit like that. That's not punk rock. Yeah, the Ramones did stupid shit, but whenever the Ramones did stupid shtick, there was some serious like resonance behind it. 53rd and Third is about a male prostitute. Beat on the Brat.
Yeah.
If you read the lyrics, it's actually pretty horrifying. It's about physically assaulting a child.
Well, yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's like the essence of East Village punk rock right there. Let's go beat up children. Arturo, what is the number 3 most definitively overrated record of all time?
You see, at least with Green Day, there's one album that I like, and they have a smattering of singles that I like. So I don't totally hate Billy Joe. I agree Billy Joe got better as a songwriter. Number 3 is a band that I fucking hated when I first heard them, and I've continued to dislike their music, and their music has gotten worse. It sucked at first, and it's gotten even worse.
Yeah.
And that is maybe my pick. This is the number 3 most definitively overrated album of all time. My pick for the number 1 most definitively overrated band of all time. Number 3, Arcade Farce, and their debut album from 2004, Funeral.
Oh, and hey, for the much less educated than us, that's the Arcade Fire. Let's be fair.
Yeah, listen, man. All the things that people like to make fun of and criticize Bono and U2 for being pompous and bloated and indulgent and self-important. Dude, you can point all of that and twofold on Win Butler and Arcade Fire.
Yeah.
And seriously. I would say even more so than Bono, because at least with Bono, you kind of felt that he meant it.
Yeah,
I've never gotten that from Win Butler, like with Jarvis Cocker, but not as kitschy and not as campy. It's indie hipster shtick, and it's no surprise that Arcade Fire fans, who are the most obnoxious fans in all of rock and roll. And of course, when this album came out in fall of 2004, it got big in 2005. And I'm here listening to the whole album, like, what the fuck is this bullshit? Like fucking wannabe indie want to be indie yet craving to be arena rock bullshit. At least U2 was inventive with some of the music they made. There's nothing inventive about Arcade Fire. It's just like overly theatrical, overly emotional. I don't want to say camp, but just bloated fucking shit with crappy melodies, crappy songwriting, and even their second album was basically a bullshit fake Springsteen. So like in every step of their and then the album after that, they recruited James Murphy. They went electronic. Let's take the Arcade Fire bombastic arena rock song, make it electronic. Because now
it was
James
terrible.
Murphy, and not even and I love James Murphy, and not even he could make a chicken salad out of chicken shit. That is Arcade Fire's music. No, yeah, go ahead, Chris. Yes.
No, I'm sorry. I was going to say about the James Murphy Arcade Fire marriage. I was actually hopeful about that because I thought if anybody could find Win Butler's inner goodness and rhythm, and bring out maybe a fun side to Mr. Butler, it would have been James Murphy. Nope, didn't work. And
so how would you describe Arcade Fire's music in a sentence, Chris?
10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag. I mean, basically, they just try to stuff way too much in and way too much drama. And Win Butler is just. And look, Bono could sing. Win Butler can't sing.
Oh, he's a terrible voice.
Yeah, Win Butler might as well be Tarzan.
My God.
So
like I said, it's just melodramatic. Indie trying to be bombastic arena pomp without the songcraft behind it. The songcraft just isn't there. They don't have the song.
I will say this.
They have the sound. They don't have the songs.
They have one great song, which is Wake Up,
from the first one.
From The Funeral, which is the album we're talking about. And that is one of the top alternative rock, modern rock, whatever you want to call it, singles of the 2000s, which, I love how it does the build up. And for Maximalism, it has this sort of anthemic quality. And then the second half, it just kind of gets this, when it revs up, it almost gets this kind of like 50s or early 60s kind of swing going to it. So that's a fun song. For a maximal over the top rock anthem, that's the way you do it. The only problem is that they tried to do that with every damn song. Yeah, and it was kind of like Jose Canseco. You would have a few towering home runs a year, and then the rest of the time you were striking out so bad that you were causing headwinds behind home plate. I mean, that's basically the Arcade Fire, and they did it over and over and over again. For 15 years. Like I said, even James Murphy couldn't save them. That was chipper.
That was chipper. And the next one is even happier. Number 2 most definitively overrated album of all time from one of the most unlikable rock stars of all time. Chris, who is it?
Oh, we're talking about Hole's Live Through This.
Or as you said earlier, Courtney Hole.
Yeah, Courtney Hole. So this is Courtney Love. And yeah, I think Hole was short for asshole. Because Courtney Love, obviously, she's a household name. I don't need to go too much into her. She's an LA chick who was well reared. She played Nancy in the movie Sid. Nancy was very good, but she actually played in The People versus Larry Flint. She played the girlfriend of Larry Flint,
right,
and was very good. So she's a good actress. Yeah. And so that's a pretext for why this album is so overrated.
It helped her in her music career for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Because she was good on Artifice, and she found herself married to Kurt Cobain. And not only that, and I know this is probably going to make me asshole of the year, and so write me at curmudgeonrock@gmail.com. But she played the sexual violence card in a way that was, for me, and again, I'm a dude, so maybe misplaced, but just felt really overwrought and fake and almost exploitive.
Yeah.
in the way that she did it. I mean, she
Yeah.
did it with a few of her songs, with Violet and Asking for It and Doll Parts, and a lot of that stuff. I mean, look, were some of those good songs? Yes, especially Asking for It, but it just felt like really, really fake through the whole thing. And a lot of people look at it as being this big anthemic, hooky, sort of female alternative, or sort of female response to all the grunge dudes,
Right.
because it basically was a Seattle. I mean, at that point, she was going back and forth between LA and Seattle, and half her band was Seattle. And so, okay, there's one great song on the record, Miss World, uh, which is so good and has such an edge to it. I've always been convinced that if Kurt Cobain didn't write it, he was at least in the room during the sessions and had a huge influence on it, because it's the greatest phony Nirvana song, one of them ever recorded. Brilliant stuff. And she played the irony card on that one very, very well. The rest of the record, though, not a whole lot of good songs. The hits and the ones that everybody knows, yes, pretty good songs, pretty melodic. But the rest of it is just this droning kind of. The melodies are like bleh.
Yeah.
And it's just her kind of like trying to vamp on certain things, and with this sort of echoey vocals, it really, to me, is kind of a boring record. And like I said, the main reason I think it's overrated is because she's celebrated for who she was, or for the iconoclasm, for the association with Cobain, and with those couple of anthems about sexual violence. But I really think that she just is a phony baloney, and
she always was. Yeah.
and a product of ambition. And she kind of went where the winds blew. And it's really kind of just reflected on this record, where she is only able to get deep for a few songs, and then the rest of it is a bunch of meandering bullshit.
Yeah.
And I think the ultimate indictment of this record is that a few years later, in 1998, Hole releases Celebrity Skin, which is a way better record. Why? Because it's California sunny pop, where Billy Corgan co-wrote or wrote 3 or 4 of the best songs, including
Right.
the wonderful title track, Celebrity Skin, and Malibu. Also at that time, she had Melissa Off D'Amour in the band to replace bassist Kristen Pfaff, who had died of heroin overdose. Melissa Off D'Amour was a very, very talented bassist and musician and harmony vocalist. And so with her there, they're a better band, but they went full poppy. And they went very California, and just sort of very, Celebrity Skin is her sort of goofing on artifice. So I just don't see it. I mean, look, Lift This, it's an angry album, but it's a superficially angry record.
Yeah, no shit.
Very superficially angry record. And as Arturo has pointed out on this show, at various times and in conversations, and even in a recent Facebook scrap, there's about 20 bands and female artists that were contemporaries of Courtney Love that did the same thing way better. And when they talked about female empowerment and recovery from sexual violence and all that, did it way more compellingly, did it way more convincingly, angrily, and let's face it, did it a whole lot better. Better songs, better singing, better arrangements, better playing. And even in the case of Bikini Kill and Kathleen Hanna, and with the women from Sleater-Kinney, better personas.
Yeah,
so that's all I have to say.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, you pretty much said it all. I mean, the thing with me is that, oh man, like you said, I want to proactively defend ourselves against accusations of sexism oh, you don't like Courtney Hall in Love, because she was a female in rock and roll. She was an actual woman with an actual female point of view in a man's world of rock and roll. You should love, they should respect it. No, because she got the airplay that deservedly should have gone to other much better, more authentic, more original female rock and roll artists, like some of the ones you mentioned. And I'll mention Liz Phair. I'll mention PJ Harvey. I'll mention half of Stereolab. I'll mention the Breeders. I'll mention 7 Year Bitch, a Seattle band that was way better than Hole.
Yeah.
I'll mention L7, another one way better than Hole.
Fucking awesome band.
Yeah, those are all female rock and roll artists, all with authentic female points of view that did not get the airplay that Courtney Love got. Courtney Love got it because she played the game. She was Kurt Cobain's wife, and she hustled her way to where she got. I respect her in that regard. She has hustle. You gotta have game. The woman had some game. As far as talent, no. Fuck that. She didn't have that much talent at all. And second of all, her little kinder whore look that she made popular during this period, the people, it was called in the media the kinder whore, whore look,
Don't blame us for that one, folks.
Yeah, no, that was actually the name it was given, and it was her, in a little girl's outfit, but all grungy and musty and looking all slutty and with makeup and whatever. She was in a band before Hole. She was in a band called Babes in Toyland.
Yes.
Another all-female band that was way better than Hole. But anyway, Courtney Love was briefly a member of that band. And Kat Bjelland, the lead singer, guitarist, and main songwriter of that band.
Who's amazing.
She created that look. That once Courtney Love got kicked out of the band, she basically appropriated that look for Hole. So that look was originally Babes in Toyland, and their album from 1992, Fontanelle, one of the best grunge albums of the era. I highly recommend anyone get it or listen to it. That's an option for a future Vault segment. But anyway, yeah, Courtney Love did not originate the kinder whore look. She stole it from Kat Bjelland when she was in the band Babes in Toyland, another great band. And yeah, and everything, and all the other points you made, Chris, I'm with. Lots of 1990s was a great decade for female empowerment in rock and roll. Courtney Love should not be the number one pinnacle person on that list. Not at all.
Overrated. And now we and I can't wait for this. We move on to the single most overrated album in the history of rock and roll, according to the Curmudgeons. Arturo,
here we go. It is number one. And the distinction goes to Jeff Buckley and his album, his only album that he released in his lifetime, Grace, from 1994. Now, this album is revered by so many people. It's revered mostly for his vocals. And I admit, the guy is a great, had like his father, Tim Buckley, and he inherited Tim Buckley's amazing voice, his octave range, all of that. But two things why I think Grace suffers. Number one, I don't like opera. All right. and Jeff Buckley on Grace aspires to the operatic, him being the big Edith Piaf fan that he was. And a lot of the songs are very, he tries to pick operatic vocals and operatic dynamics into basically what they are folk rock songs.
Yeah, I was going to say, opera and folk rock are two great tastes that do not go great together.
Yeah, well, I don't like opera at all. Fuck opera. And so putting that with folk rock, and may I say very generic, middle of the road, underwritten, like pretty crappy, like sub Counting Crows folk rock. No offense, Chris. I know you're a Counting Crows fan. I can't stand them either. But yeah, it's really bad songs with a bad musical idea, albeit with a very talented singer who had a talented voice. But this is a guy, Jeff Buckley, who A, needed a songwriter, B, needed a better band, C, needed a real producer, a better producer, to get him in the studio and give him a real artistic vision. This is the classic example of a wonderfully talented vocalist who fancies themselves as an all-around artist. I can sing, I can write great lyrics, I can write great songs. No, Jeff, you can sing. You could sing. That's it. You could not write songs. You could not write good lyrics. Even your covers, I'm not, people love his version of Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah. I'm not a fan of it. I don't like his vocals on Hallelujah. Great voice done in a bad way on a really, in my opinion, a shitty cover. I know I'm in the minority. I'm alone on the island that thinks Jeff Buckley's version of Hallelujah sucks, but I know, but I will stand by that Grace is just not that good of a record. And I've given it a chance. I've tried to like it. I've listened to it several times. I'm like, my God, this is like, it's sub Counting Crows. And even though his hero is Robert Plant, Jeff Buckley loves Robert Plant.
Yeah.
But even solo Robert Plant is better than this.
Oh, I know. Yeah. And well, I don't know. Robert Plant's been doing great solo stuff in the last 15 years.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Well, that and stuff with Alison Krauss. And so Robert Plant, the twilight here of his career has been great. But anyway, my thought on Jeff Buckley is it kind of, he's the epitome of one of my my great philosophies of life, or one of my great indictment statements of life, which is handsome guys can get away with anything.
Yeah.
Handsome guy with an operatic voice. I remember when I was doing online dating back in like the early 2000s, mid 2000s, late 2000s, and then into the 2010s, you would get all these profiles of all these girls who are like, oh, Jeff Buckley's Grace makes me cry. Oh, it just sings to my heart. It's the sexiest album. And I'm like, oh, God. And I'm just, like I said, handsome guys get away with anything. So, okay, fine. It's the voice. I will say this. The Hallelujah cover, if it wasn't for him, would be wonderful. They found the best pace for that song and the best rhythm and this beautiful guitar. And this, again, just the tempo, just the meaning of that song. I know MTV is the one that popularized that version of it because they played it over scenes of 9/11, the destruction of 9/11 over and over again, which I will say at the time made me cry. But it was the aesthetic of the song, but his vocal performance. It's kind of like, imagine like an American Idol semifinalist. And you know how like they like to do karaoke and like butcher the hell, and like they're trying to impress the judges by doing runs over everything. That's what Jeff Buckley was doing on that. Look, the cover of Lilac Wine is pretty good. Last Goodbye, again, it's another one of those cases. Like the music, like the little pedal steel thing that's going on in there. Great little tempo and all of that. But he ruins it with his goddamn voice. And that is the thing that happens over and over and over again.
Yeah. There are he's a talented singer. He has a great voice who uses it badly.
Yes. There are 11 songs over the course of 57 minutes on Grace. He ruins 10 of them. Just through his singing and through his whatever his shtick was, his emotiveness or whatever you want to call it.
I would call it his operatic affectations.
Yes, that is a very good way to put it. Lilac Wine, he actually kind of plays it straight and kind of understates it a little bit. So that's my favorite track on that record. Again, for a while, I will admit I did own Grace. I liked it at first, but then I just caught on to the fact of like, this is kind of ridiculous. This guy's vocal stylings. I just, you and I are just in that camp. We do not understand the reverence for Jeff Buckley. And it has nothing to do with the fact that he drowned in 1997. Because by 1997, there was the cult of adoring women and gay men, probably, who adored the handsome guy who could sing his ass off. And he got away with it. And so, mediocre record that's forever celebrated for the most simplistic and superficial and dumbest of reasons.
Yeah, basically show off the operatic affectations. That's Jeff Buckley in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's him and it's him and Ted Bundy that proved that handsome guys can get away with anything. The Vault. Welcome to the Vault. The Vault is where Arturo and I, we go deep into the recesses of our treasure chests, otherwise known as our archives, as our musical collections. In Arturo's case, he's probably up to at least about 3 terabytes worth of shit. In me, I just stick to Spotify, which means I'm the lame one here. But anyway, what we do is we plumb every week. We want you to be as excited about our old shit as we are. And we want to inspire you to go search for your old stuff too. And again, we encourage you to make vault recommendations for us to cover through any of our many forums that we have already described, most especially our email and our social media. Anyway, so real simple exercise. We both have an old album. We're both going to review it. So, Arturo, what old album are you bringing out of the vault?
Yes, I'm doing a German band from the 1970s called Faust, and their album Faust 4, Roman numeral 4. Now, when people think of the unfortunately titled Kraut Rock, basically it's a subgenre of rock consisting of German rock bands from the 1970s. When people think of that, people think of the massively influential Can. They think of Neu, and they think of Kraftwerk, who people forget that before they were an electronic group, they actually were a band with organic instruments.
Yes.
Anyway, and rightfully so, they should think of those bands. As we discussed a few episodes ago, Can and Kraftwerk should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame just for their influence alone. However, on this episode, we're going to or in this segment, I should say, we're going to shine a light on one of the lesser renowned bands from this golden era of underground German rock, and that band is, of course, Faust. Now, that Faust were formed in Bremen, the city of Bremen, in early 1971, and their maniacally intense live shows and the glowing press reviews of these shows gave them enough of a reputation in the underground rock community to secure a recording contract with Polydor Records. Now, released in late 71, their self-titled debut didn't really sound like their live shows and was full of long experimental soundscape pieces. Naturally, it didn't sell at all, much to Polydor's chagrin. So in 1972, they put out their second album called So Far. And while it still maintained Faust's penchant for sonic adventurism, jazzy flourishes, and that repetitive, hypnotic grooves in keeping with the rest of the Kraut Rock scene, it actually showed some conventional songwriting and, God forbid, melodies and subtle pop hooks. All you have to do is check out the opening track of that album. It's A Rainy Day Sunshine Girl, to find out what it would be like if Can and the Velvet Underground actually got together. It really does sound like that. So while So Far was critically hailed for its innovation and sold more than the first album, it didn't really sell enough for Polydor and their expectations. So Faust were eventually dropped from the label and later picked up by Richard Branson and Virgin Records. We all know who Richard Branson is, right?
Spaceman.
Yeah. Well, he owned a record label called Virgin Records.
Yes, he did.
And he had a record store chain called Virgin Record Stores. Anyway, now, how did Faust reward the faith of Richard Branson? Well, in June 1973, they put out the Faust Tapes. That's the name of the album, the Faust Tapes, which was a cut and paste collage of sliced bits and pieces from their private practice sessions, which were not originally intended for public release, mind you. So this hodgepodge collection of mostly under 1 minute jams, quote unquote, and that's putting it lightly, was so uncommercial that Virgin issued the album at the price of a single, 48 pence in UK money, because there's no way they could charge this as a full album because it wasn't. It was just a bunch of 1-minute sound snippets. Granted, this was part of a deal that Can's manager, Uwe Nettelbeck, made with Virgin. For the first album, they would give Virgin a collection of Faust recordings completely for free. Like, here's an album, you don't have to pay us for it. For free. You can take it. And they gave it to Virgin to do whatever they wished with it as far as pricing and marketing. Now, me personally, I can only assume this was done in order to entice Virgin to sign the band, with the hopes that the next Virgin album would be the quote-unquote real album. So here, we'll give you a real album of nothing but like shit fragments for free. Release that, charge it as a single, and then we'll give you the next album for real. And Virgin said, hey, 2 albums for the price of 1. Sure, we'll do that. I that's what I think the thinking was. It had to have been that. Why else would they do this? Anyway, was it worth it from Virgin's perspective to do this kind of deal with Faust? Well, from an artistic standpoint of having one of the boldest, most original rock recordings of the 1970s as part of your catalog, yes. Was released in the fall of 73. Faust 4 combines that typical unpredictability and adventurousness and spontaneity of Can, the sonic innovation of Neu, particularly in those un-guitar-like guitar sounds, with this perverse sense of humor that most of the German bands of that era simply lacked, really. Recorded partly in England and partly in Munich. The album kicks off with the aptly named Kraut Rock, as if the band was poking fun at the whole image making and the nearly mythic status.
That's very meta.
Yeah, they were meta humor before there was meta humor. They were kind of poking fun of it. Anyway, the song itself is an 11-minute droning instrumental. Now, parody or not, it's one of the most spellbinding tracks on the album, which has this swirling whirlpool of shifting rhythms, skittering synthesizers, and this wall of sound, molten lava guitar playing, all held together by a very punchy, repetitive bass line. So think Cluster meets Neu for all of you Kraut Rock files out there, of which I'm probably the only one. But anyway, the humor kicks in with the Sad Skinhead, a rather audacious song title considering that this is a German band. This song it's got the staccato reggae guitar, xylophone flourishes, jaunty drum rhythm, and this exaggerated corny vocal shtick. Somehow it works. It's one of the catchiest songs on the album. You have Jennifer, which with this lyrically, it's a romantic relationship song, a plea to appease a pissed off woman. But musically, it's the most seductive and beautiful track on the album. Keeping this down tempo hypnotic rhythm with this gorgeous melancholy guitar arpeggio. The song eventually dissolves into this whacked out guitar static before transforming itself into an almost ragtime jazz piano instrumental. Yeah, you heard that right. Yep. Extreme juxtaposition of moods and textures is basically a Faust trademark. And this album pulls it off better than anything else in their discography. Just a Second starts off as a funk jam with groovy guitar soloing, then segues into this mind-bending cacophony of synth noise and guitar feedback that oddly holds together really well. Then you have the coup de grace, Picnic on a Frozen River. Starts off as a happily demented sing-along with a foreboding guitar solo underpinning it all, before it evolves into like this Soft Machine style jazz rock jam, complete with like skronking saxophone solo, before it transforms into an up-tempo race between a cartoonish synth riff and a dissonant, gnarly guitar solo, where the guitarist is clearly mangling the wah-wah pedal to death. Yes, this is all one song.
Yep.
So, how do you end such a schizophrenic album? Well, with a languid acoustic folk number embellished with minimal cymbal brushing from the drummer that ends with a woman doing spoken word in Swedish and a guitar solo that is at times trying to evoke the sound of someone vomiting.
Okay,
That's the end.
Yeah, that sounds like a story from the old National Lampoon, like something Harold Ramis would have wrote back then.
Yeah,
So,
totally. It sounds like a parody of Kraut Rock. It kind of is, but they pull it off. And I swear, this all sounds 100% better than I'm describing it.
yeah.
So in a German music scene filled with oddballs, Faust were the most oddballish of the bunch. And unfortunately, their record sales reflected that. Virgin were willing to give the band one more chance, but the label rejected recordings they made for a fifth album, and they broke up soon after in 1975.
So, Arturo, you remember the Pointer Sisters, right?
Oh yeah, of course.
So,
I'm old enough to remember them. Yeah.
Yes, and so this is when we were little kids. That the Pointer Sisters had their moment in the glorious pop limelight with a series of adult contemporary, kind of horny old lady songs. By this point, they're in their mid to late 30s, and so Slow Hand and Jump, and the Neutron Dance.
Oh my love,
yeah,
jump in.
Yeah, great video. I mean, hey, those women could still move. They were all pushing 40.
Yeah.
So that's what we know them from. We know them from their sort of sellout pop days. However, did you know that they played the Grand Ole Opry in 1974?
No, I did not know that. Did they get booed off the stage?
No, actually, at first they got some jeers, and you can just imagine that audience and what they would say to a bunch of black ladies.
Yeah,
it was one thing to have Charlie Pride; it's another thing to have these black women from Oakland, California, on their stage.
Yeah.
So, but from what I've read, they won them over. That was in 1974. It was kind of groundbreaking, but the reason that they were there, did you know that the Pointer Sisters won a Grammy in 1974 or for 1974 for Best Country Vocal Performance by a Duo or Group?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah, this was for the song Fairy Tale, which is a wonderfully orthodox country song written by Anita and Bonnie Porter, or Pointer. Yeah, they wrote it, I guess, in a hotel room in Woodstock, New York, and it became a staple of a fascinating journey through the historical black music called "That's a Plenty" from 1974. This was their second record. They were signed to Geffen Records at this point. Now, the Pointer Sisters, there were four of them: Anita, Bonnie, June, and Ruth. They went in and out of being a four-piece and a three-piece because of various personal issues and issues with alcohol and drugs. But at the time, there were still all four of them. They were sisters, obviously, the Pointer Sisters. Duh.
Yeah.
Yeah. They grew up lower middle class, working class in Oakland, California, by way of Arkansas. And it's the Arkansas piece that's important because they were reared on country music, they were reared on blues, they were reared on gospel and on jazz. And so on That's a Plenty, they explore all of this. And it's a fascinatingly strange record. They started off very tongue-in-cheek, very humorous. It's a mandolin-driven, almost ragtimey barbershop quartet piece called "Banging on the Pipes," where it's almost Irish in its construct about their experience growing up with the heat going off during the winters because they were too broke to afford the heat. And then, of course, this leads to an extrapolation of a 1950s theatrical piece called "Steam Heat," which which turns in, obviously is very innuendo-ish. But then this segues into a cover of an old Dizzy Gillespie song called "Salt Peanuts," which is a very fast orthodox ragtime blues or ragtime jazz.
Of course,
jazz blues. And then they just go through it. The next song is "Grinning in Your Face," which is a cover of an old blues song by Son House. And this is the Pointers to... Yeah.
By the way, the White Stripes have covered that song several times in concert.
Yeah, great song.
Yeah.
Slow burning blues. They make it sexy as hell. Those girls could sing, and they had the gospel harmonies, like just brilliantly uh, arranged vocals. I mean, again, we remember them as pop stars, but they were very serious musicians
Yeah.
who had this eclecticism and this musical vocabulary where they could do these really adventurous lefts and rights all on the same album from song to song. Shaky Flat Blues. They only wrote 2 songs on this record
Wow.
themselves.
Yeah.
The rest of them are extrapolations or covers or songs that were written for them. There is one Gamble and Huff song. You couldn't be black in 1974 and not have a Gamble and Huff song on your record.
Yeah.
I
Right.
mean, it was just a law. I mean, it was a
Yeah.
bylaw somewhere in the black music books. So you had to do that. So this album is really a lark. Oh, and I forgot to mention, Elvis Presley covered "Fairy Tale," which is the country song. And
Yeah.
the country song, it's as country as a motherfucker. I mean, you would think in the first 30 seconds it's the Byrds or Graham Parsons. So you've got you've got the lap steel, you've got the sway of all that, the guitars, and you've got all of that going on. And again, they go in and out. They do the really sexy blues numbers. They do the really rollicking ragtime blues. The title song, "That's a Plenty," which then segues into another song. It becomes a song suite, but it goes into another piece. It's called "Surf It USA," which surf it as in just hooting and hollering and being a rascal. So these girls were horny. These girls were bluesy. They were sad. They were very socially conscious, and they got all of it onto this record. I recommend it to everyone. The Pointer Sisters came back on the radar because one of them, I believe it was Bonnie, died late last year. Again, these girls have had some hard scrabble lives because of addiction and other personal problems, and so it led to some a serious musicological piece by NPR.org that I encourage people to go find. But it was just an examination of all of their influences and how they came together and how they were important, because they did some protest stuff before this. They had an anthem with "Yes We Can," which guess who was inspired by that one? We were talking about Mr. Obama or President Obama.
Right.
So, and again, they were talented singers, talented writers, talented arrangers. They had that vocabulary, and yes, the Pointer Sisters were legitimately country music stars in 1974 and 1975. This record captures that, plus a whole lot more.
Yeah, this album's
Wonderful
really eclectic. I mean, I just breezed through it on YouTube. Yeah, totally. I mean, it's a totally different group from the ones that did Jump in 1984.
Yeah, no shit.
But yeah, it's not an album that I'll go back and listen to it, but I can sit back and admire because of how diverse it is and how eclectic it is and how they pull it off. They sound sincere doing every genre they can possibly do.
Yeah, and they do, and it's basically, it's almost like a kaleidoscopic tour through, up to that point, 20th century black music in all forms.
Right.
And very reverent. Again, the highlights, I would say, are "Fairy Tale" because it's a brilliant pop song disguised as a country song. But "Grinning in Your Face," and then "Banging on the Pipes," I love just because it's so silly. And "Salt Peanuts" too. So yeah. So again, this is one of the great lost. We actually did an episode, and I encourage everybody to go back and find it in our archives, on 1974.
Yeah.
We made the case 1974 did not suck. We talked a lot about how that was not only the dawn of disco, but that was one of the great years for black music ever, because it was the young brothers and sisters that were coming up that were redefining the game.
Sure.
And I had to cut it for time, but we that's when I discovered this album, and it blew me away, and I wish I had known about it sooner. It's brilliant. Go check it out. That's a plenty. It's on Spotify and it's on YouTube, and it's there for you. So there's the vault, boys and girls. And now we have come to this. Maybe the episode itself is overrated, but we have come to the end of this album, this wonderful trek through 10 overrated albums, some of which we kind of like, others we really genuinely cannot stand.
Yeah, and I would say most of them we can't stand.
Money for Nothing by Dire Straits, Cherish by Kool and the Gang, Freedom by Wham, Don't Lose My Number by Phil Collins, Oh Sheila, Ready for the World. Those were the top 5 songs on the Billboard Hot 100 on September 27, 1985. Pretty good, right? Well, we will be revisiting September 1985 on the next episode of the Curmudgeon Rock Report. Oh, what a month. We hope you'll join us then. This is the podcast for you, oh fellow traveler through rock nerdom. Stay rude, stay crude, stay sophisticated. In the meantime, visit us on Twitter at CurmudgeonPod and hit us up at curmudgeonrock@gmail.com.